The invitation arrived on heavy cream cardstock, announcing the 25th birthday celebration of Ivy Reed in gold foil script. It listed a venue I could not afford and a date that belonged to me. 2. But my name was nowhere to be found. When I called my mother, expecting an apology, her voice was bright and terrifyingly calm. "Stay home," she said, as if she were protecting a sterile environment from a contaminant. "Nobody wants you there." The mailer arrived on a Tuesday, sandwiched between a utility bill and a flyer for a discount dental clinic. It was not a standard envelope. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with a texture that felt like pressed linen under my thumb. The kind of stationery that whispered money before you even broke the seal. My name was not on it. It was addressed simply to the occupant, which in this case was me, Genesis Reed. Though the return address belonged to the house in Ridgehaven where I had grown up. I stood in the narrow hallway of my apartment, the floorboards cold against my bare feet, and slid a fingernail under the flap. Inside lay a square of velvet finish paper, black with gold foil lettering that caught the dim light of the hallway sconce. "Celebrate resilience. Celebrate life. Join us for the 25th birthday of Ivy Reed." I stared at the number, 25. My hand did not tremble immediately. It took a moment for the absurdity to travel from my eyes to my stomach, where it settled like a stone swallowed whole. I was 32 years old. My sister, Ivy, my identical twin, was 32 years old. We had been 32 since last October, a fact attested to by the creases forming at the corners of my eyes and the ache in my lower back after a double shift. But here, printed in expensive gold foil, was the lie my parents had been curating for nearly a decade. There was a note clipped to the back, handwritten in my mother's looping, breathless script. "Just wanted you to have a keepsake for your scrapbook." So proud of her milestone. It was a clerical error, they always said. That was the phrase my father, Grant, used whenever the dates on our school forms or medical records did not match the reality of our bodies. It was a rushed hospital, he would say, his voice deep and reassuring, the voice of a man who could smooth over a cracked foundation with a smile. The paperwork got mangled in the administration shift. "Don't worry about the dates. Jenna, focus on the now." I had focused on the now for years, ignoring the fact that my driver's license, which I had fought tooth and nail to obtain, listed a birth date 7 years later than the day I was actually born. I had ignored it because challenging the Reed family narrative was like trying to shout down a hurricane. You did not win. You only lost your voice. I walked into the kitchen and set the invitation on the counter. The date of the party was this Saturday. The location was the family home. The time was 6 in the evening. My phone sat on the table. Silent. I knew I should not call. I knew, with the instinct of a dog that has been kicked enough times to recognize the boot, that reaching out would only result in pain. But the invite sat there, glittering, taunting me with its erasure of my existence. I dialed my mother. Marla Reed answered on the second ring. The background noise was a wash of high-pitched chatter and the clinking of china, the sounds of a woman in the center of a whirlwind she had created. "Hello?" Her voice was bright, performative, the tone she used when she knew people were watching her hold the phone. "Mom, it's Genesis." There was a beat of silence, a tiny, pressurized pause, where the warmth evaporated from the connection. "Oh, Genesis, I can't talk long. Sweetie, we are absolutely swamped with the vendors." "I got the invitation," I said, keeping my voice level. "The one for Ivy's 25th. "Isn't it gorgeous?" Marla said, bypassing the lie entirely. "We went with the matte finish. Ivy thought gloss was too aggressive." "Mom, we are 32. "Genesis," she sighed, the brightness curdling into warning. "Please do not start this again. You know how complicated the timeline is with the foundation. We are celebrating the milestone of her recovery. It is symbolic. You know that. It says 25th birthday. Mom, not 25th recovery anniversary. It says birthday." It is a theme, she snapped. Look, why are you calling? Do you need money? Grant said he sent the check for your rent. I don't need money. I'm calling because, well, I'm your daughter. Too. If the family is getting together, if there's a party. No, she said. The word was sharp, immediate. Stay home, Genesis. Nobody wants you there. The air left my lungs. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. I had heard variations of this sentence for years. It's better if you sit this one out. You know how you get in crowds. Let's not overwhelm Ivy. But this was stripped of all pretense. Nobody? I whispered. We are protecting Ivy's vibe, Marla said, her voice lowering, assuming the conspiratorial tone of a victim. She is in a very delicate place right now. The pressure of this event is immense. Having you there, looming around with your intensity, it would just throw her off. We can't risk a regression. I wouldn't loom, I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. I would just be there. I could come early. I could bring a gift, say happy birthday to my sister, and leave before the guests even arrive. I just want to see her. Mom, it's been 6 months. You always make it about yourself, Marla said. This is Ivy's night. Why can't you just let her have something? I'm not trying to take it. Here's your father. There was a shuffling sound, the muffled quiet of a hand over the receiver, and then Grant Reed's voice filled the line. It was a voice that sounded like mahogany furniture and expensive scotch. Rich, smooth, and utterly immovable. Genesis, he said. It wasn't a greeting. It was a command to settle down. Dad, I just want to come for an hour. We have discussed this, Grant said. Ivy's medical team has advised strict control over her environment. Stressors are to be eliminated. You know you stress her. Jen, it's not your fault, he added, throwing a crumb of comfort that tasted like ash. It's just the dynamic. Your presence brings up the old trauma. We have to prioritize her health. My presence brings up trauma? I asked. I'm her twin. I'm the only person who actually knows her. You are the person who reminds her of the sick years, Grant said firmly. We are moving past that. Stay in the city. We will send you some photos. And Genesis? What? Don't cause a scene. We have important people coming. If you care about this family, you will let us handle this. The line went dead. I stood in the silence of my kitchen. The phone still pressed to my ear. My hand was shaking. It was a fine, rhythmic tremor that started in my fingers and worked its way up to my wrist. I knew this shake. It was the physical manifestation of a lifetime of being told that my reality was incorrect, that my emotions were dangerous, and that my existence was a liability to the people I was supposed to love. They did it again, a voice said from the doorway. I turned. Tessa Vale stood there, leaning against the doorframe, a laundry basket propped on her hip. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes, sharp and intelligent, were narrowed at me. They told me not to come, I said. I set the phone down on the table, careful not to let it clatter. Dad said I'm a medical stressor, Tessa scoffed, a harsh sound that broke the tension in the room. She walked over, dropped the laundry basket on the sofa, and took my hands in hers. Her palms were warm. Jenma, look at me. You are a 32-year-old woman with a job, a credit score, and a cat who adores you. You are not a walking pathogen. They're throwing her a 25th birthday party, I said. On paper, they're doing the 25 thing again. Tessa paused, her eyebrows shooting up. That is psychotic. I mean, I know they're weird, but that is legally insane. How are they explaining the math to the neighbors? They say it's symbolic, or a clerical error, or they just smile and nobody asks because the champagne is expensive. I pulled my hands away and wrapped my arms around myself. They said nobody wants me there. If the party is just a nice family gathering, why are they treating you like a bomb? Tessa asked gently. Think about it. Jen, normal families don't ban siblings from birthdays. Normal families don't lie about their children's ages by 7 years. They are hiding something. They aren't hiding anything, I said automatically, the defense mechanism kicking in. They just love her more. That's not a secret. Ivy is the survivor. Ivy is the miracle. I'm just the other one, the difficult one. You are not difficult, Tessa said firmly. You are just the one who remembers things they want to forget. She reached out and touched my shoulder. But look at you. You're shaking. You can't breathe right. They do this to you every time. Maybe you should listen to them. Not because they're right, but because they don't deserve you. I can't, I whispered. If I don't go, I'm admitting that I don't belong. You don't belong, Tessa said, soft but brutal. And that might be the best thing that ever happened to you. But I couldn't accept that. I couldn't accept that the biology that knit Ivy and me together in the womb could be severed by a gold foil invitation. Saturday arrived with a gray, oppressive sky that threatened rain but never delivered. I spent the morning pacing my apartment, rehearsing conversations I would never have. By 3 p.m, the anxiety had calcified into a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't going to storm the gates. I wasn't going to flip tables. I was just going to drive to Ridgehaven, walk to the front door, hand my father a gift for Ivy, a first edition of the bell jar I had found at a used bookstore. A quiet joke between us from when we were teenagers, and then I would leave. I put on a dress I rarely wore, a simple navy sheath that made me look professional, invisible. I pulled my hair back tight. I wanted to look stable. I wanted to look like someone who could not possibly be a medical risk. The drive to Ridgehaven took an hour, as the city skyline faded in the rearview mirror, replaced by the manicured lawns and high hedges of the suburbs. I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. Ridgehaven was a place of silence and surveillance, where the grass was cut to a uniform height and the secrets were buried under layers of mulch. I turned onto my parents' street and immediately realized my plan to park in the driveway was impossible. Cars lined both sides of the road. Mercedes, Audis, vintage Jaguars. It looked less like a birthday party and more like a political fundraiser. I drove past the house, my heart hammering against my ribs. The house itself was transformed. It was a sprawling colonial that my parents had bought 5 years ago, claiming it was a downsize despite it being twice the size of our childhood home. Now, huge white tents occupied the front lawn. A banner hung across the porch columns, professionally printed, Ivy Reed, 25 years of light. I parked 3 blocks away, in front of a house I didn't recognize. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the gift wrapped in silver paper on the passenger seat. Stay home. Nobody wants you there. I grabbed the book and got out of the car. The air smelled of impending rain and expensive catering, roasting meats, truffle oil, charcoal. I walked on the sidewalk, keeping my head down. As I approached the house, I saw activity near the side entrance, the service gate that led to the backyard. A white van was double parked, its back doors open. 2 men in coordinated navy polo shirts were unloading heavy, plastic crates. The shirts had a logo embroidered on the breast, a stylized tree with roots that formed a heart. Beneath it, the words, Brightwell Family Initiative. I paused behind a large oak tree. Brightwell. I had never heard the name. My parents had always claimed money was tight when I needed help with tuition or rent. Liquidity issues, Grant would say. Everything is tied up in the trust. But here were crates of branded merchandise. Careful with that, one of the men said, struggling with a box. These are the donor packets. Where do they go? The other asked. Main tent. The clinic rep will be here at 7 to do the presentation, so get the display up before then. Clinic rep. My stomach twisted. Was this a birthday party or a sales pitch? I moved away from the street, slipping through the neighbor's hedge, a maneuver I had perfected as a teenager sneaking out to meet boys my father didn't approve of. I made my way to the back of the property, where the privacy fence had a loose slat I hoped hadn't been fixed. It hadn't. I peered through the gap. The backyard was a spectacle. Strings of Edison bulbs crisscrossed the lawn, glowing softly against the gray sky. There were round tables with white linens, crystal centerpieces, and a jazz trio playing softly on a raised platform near the pool. And there she was, Ivy. She stood near the rose garden, wearing a dress of pale, shimmering gold that made her look ethereal. Her hair, identical to mine but glossier, fell in perfect waves around her shoulders. She was laughing at something a man in a tuxedo was saying, her head thrown back, her throat exposed. She looked radiant. She looked adored. She looked 25. The injustice of it hit me so hard I nearly gasped. How did she do it? How did she wear the lie so easily? We shared a face. We shared a DNA sequence. But she was the princess in the tower, and I was the witch in the woods. I stepped away from the fence and walked toward the side gate. The one that led to the driveway. I needed to go to the front door. I needed to be legitimate. I rounded the corner of the garage and froze. My mother was standing there. She was speaking to a catering manager, pointing aggressively at a tray of appetizers. She wore a structured red gown that looked like armor. She turned, sensing movement, and her eyes locked on mine. The reaction was instantaneous. Her posture stiffened. The smile she had been wearing vanished, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated panic. She abandoned the caterer and rushed toward me, her heels clicking rapidly on the pavement. "Genesis," she hissed, stopping 3 feet away, blocking my path to the party. "What are you doing here?" "I brought a gift," I said, lifting the silver package. "I parked down the street. I just wanted to drop it off." "You couldn't listen," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed rage. "You just couldn't listen. I told you explicitly. It's a book, Mom. It's for Ivy. She doesn't need your books. She doesn't need your energy." Marla looked over her shoulder, checking if any guests had seen us. "Please don't do this. Please don't ruin this for her." "Ruin what?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "Why am I a disaster? Why am I not allowed to exist in my own family's pictures?" Marla turned back to me, and her face was cold, a mask of stone. "Because you complicate things." It wasn't an insult. It was a statement of fact. I was a complication in a simplified equation. "I'm her sister," I said. "We are twins." "You are not helpful," Marla said. She looked past me, lifting her hand in a sharp, beckoning motion. I turned. A man was walking down the driveway toward us. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like a second skin. He had silver hair and a face that was handsome in a vague, generic way, like a politician in a stock photo. I didn't recognize him, but my body did. A shiver went up my spine, a primitive warning. "Brooks," Marla said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Handle it." The man, Brooks, stopped a respectful distance away. He didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, like a teacher finding a favorite student cheating. "Ms. Reed," he said. His voice was soft, cultivated. "Let's step over to the side, shall we? We don't want to cause a scene near the valet." "Who are you?" I asked, stepping back. "I'm Brooks Lannett," he said, offering a small, tight smile. "I represent your father's interests, and the Foundation's." "I'm just leaving a gift," I said, clutching the book to my chest. "Of course you are," Brooks said soothingly. He stepped closer, crowding my personal space without touching me. "But you understand, Genesis, that your presence here is inconsistent with the arrangements." "What arrangements?" "The agreements," he said. "The ones we put in place to ensure Ivy's stability. You remember, don't you? I never agreed to be banned from my sister's life." Brooks tilted his head. "Well, not in those words, but you did sign certain acknowledgments, years ago, during the family medical event." My mind stumbled. Family medical event. The phrase triggered a hazy memory. A hospital room, white walls, the smell of antiseptic, my father handing me a clipboard while I was groggy from sedation. "Just standard forms, Genwa, just so we can take care of the billing." "I was 18, I said, the memory blurry. "I had the flu, or something." "It was a difficult time for everyone," Brooks said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming almost hypnotic. "But we have a protocol now, for everyone's safety, especially yours." He reached out and gently took the silver package from my hands. I was so stunned I let him take it. "I will make sure Ivy gets this," he said. "Now, I think it's best if you return to your car. We have security at the perimeter, and I would hate to have them escort you. It looks so messy." I looked at Marla. She wasn't looking at me. She was watching the party, her back turned, checking the lighting on the tent. "Go home, Genesis," Brooks said, turning me gently by the shoulder. "Nobody needs to know you were here." I walked back to my car. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I placed one foot in front of the other, feeling the gravel through the soles of my shoes. I got into my sedan, locked the doors, and sat there in the silence. The rejection wasn't what made my hands cold. I was used to the rejection. I was used to Marla's cruelty and Grant's dismissal. What frightened me was the efficiency. Brooks Lannett hadn't yelled. He hadn't panicked. He had cited a document. He had referenced a protocol. My exclusion wasn't an emotional reaction from a dysfunctional family. It was a procedure. It was a line item in a contract I didn't remember signing. I started the engine. The dashboard clock read 6:15 p.m. inside the tent. Ivy was being celebrated for being 25, for being the light, for being the survivor. I pulled away from the curb, leaving Ridgehaven behind. But as the road stretched out before me, the sadness began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They had made a mistake. They had made it too professional. If it was just a mean family, there was nothing to do but grieve. But if it was a contract, if it was a foundation, if it was a medical event with paperwork leaves a trail. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to read the fine print. The Sunday morning after the party did not bring a hangover, but it brought a headache that felt geological, as if tectonic plates were shifting behind my eyes. I woke up on my living room floor, surrounded by the contents of 3 plastic storage bins I had dragged out of the closet at 2 a.m. My apartment looked like the scene of a burglary committed by a very bored accountant. Papers were stacked in piles on the rug, the coffee table, and the sofa. I had spent the last 5 hours hunting for proof of my own history. If Brooks Lannett claimed I had signed acknowledgments, and if my mother claimed I was a complication, I needed to know exactly what kind of complication I was. I sat cross-legged, holding my birth certificate. It was the original copy, or at least the copy my parents had given me when I moved out at 22. It was yellowed at the edges, the paper soft and fibrous. Genesis Reed, born October 14th. I ran my thumb over the date. The ink looked standard, but the texture of the paper beneath it was rougher, as if something had been erased. And there, in the bottom right corner, faint enough that I had ignored it for a decade, was a purple stamp. Corrected date. Clerk ID 409. I picked up my Social Security card. It looked normal. I picked up my high school transcript, which I had saved for reasons I couldn't recall. Genesis M. Reed. I frowned. My middle name was Marie. M was correct. Then I reached for the discharge summary from the hospital visit when I was 18, the family medical event Brooks had alluded to. It was a single sheet of carbon copy paper, pink and flimsy. Patient, Genesis A. Reed. Admit. Date, June 12th. Diagnosis, acute anxiety reaction. Sedation required. A. I stared at the letter. It was a typo. It had to be a typo. Hospitals made mistakes all the time. Nurses were overworked. Data entry was boring. But Grant Reed was a man who sent back soup if it was 2 degrees below scalding. He checked every line item on a restaurant bill. He did not tolerate typos in legal or medical documents. If my name was wrong on the discharge paper, why hadn't he fixed it? Unless the error served a purpose. Unless Genesis A. Reed was a separate entity, a file to be buried. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number for Hollis River Medical Center. The hospital listed on my birth certificate. It was Sunday, but hospitals didn't close. Hollis River, main switchboard, a voice said. It sounded tinny, automated. I need to speak to the records department, I said. Records is closed until Monday at 8 o'clock. Is this a medical emergency? I hung up. Of course. I spent the rest of the day in a fugue state, organizing the papers chronologically. The timeline of my life, when laid out on the floor, was full of holes. There were gaps in my pediatric records. There was a 2-year period in middle school where I had no report cards, only a letter from a private tutor stating I was progressing adequately in homebound instruction. I didn't remember being homebound. I remembered going to school. I remembered riding the bus. Or did I? The gaslighting was working. I was starting to doubt my own memory of sitting in a classroom. Monday morning, I called Hollis River again from my desk at work. I was an account manager for a logistics firm, a job that required me to be organized, pleasant, and invisible, traits my family had inadvertently trained me for perfectly. Records? A woman barked. She sounded like she was eating toast. Hi, my name is Genesis Reed. I'm trying to get a copy of my full birth file and the discharge summary from a visit in 2012. Date of birth? October 14th, 1993. I heard typing, heavy, aggressive keystrokes. Then the typing stopped. You said Genesis Reed? Yes. I have the birth record, but the file is flagged. Flagged for what? It says restricted access, level 4. The woman stopped chewing. I can't open this. You have to go through the third-party archive. I don't understand, I said, keeping my voice low so my cubicle neighbor wouldn't hear. I am the patient. It is my file. Why is it restricted? Maternity wing at Hollis River closed 5 years ago, she said, her tone shifting from bored to defensive. All the legacy files got moved to ironclad storage, but usually, I can still print a summary. This one is locked out. It says legal hold. Legal hold? I haven't sued anyone. Honey, I don't know what to tell you. If you want the file, you have to submit a notarized request to Ironclad. They charge $50 a page for retrieval. $50 a page? And they take 6 weeks. Do you want the address? I took the address. I wrote it down on a sticky note, my hand shaking. A legal hold. A level 4 restriction. This wasn't a clerical error. This was a firewall. I needed a reality check. I needed someone who had been there. Someone who wasn't on the payroll. I texted Nina Caro. Lunch? Need to ask you something weird. Nina and I had been close in middle school. Before the social stratification of high school drifted us apart, she was now a real estate agent with a sharp memory and a low tolerance for nonsense. We met at a salad place downtown. Nina looked expensive and busy, tapping on her phone, but she hugged me with genuine warmth. You look, she hesitated, looking at my face, intense. Everything okay? Did you know it was Ivy's 25th birthday on Saturday? I asked, stabbing a cherry tomato with my fork. Nina paused. Her 25th? Again? You knew? I saw the Facebook posts, Nina said, grimacing. It looked extravagant. I assumed you were there, just hiding in the back. You always hated crowds. I wasn't invited, I said. My mother told me I would ruin the vibe. Nina put her fork down. That is classic Marla. I'm sorry, Jen. Nina, do you remember when we were kids? Did I miss a lot of school? Miss school? Nina frowned. Thinking. Not really. I mean, you missed field trips sometimes, and you never came to the sleepovers. Why? Your mom always said Ivy would get anxious if you left, Nina said. She said Ivy had separation anxiety, and if you weren't in the house, Ivy would have panic attacks, so you had to stay home to be her emotional support animal. We all thought it was weird, but parents are weird. Ivy was the anxious one? I asked. But Dad says I'm the unstable one. He says I stress her out. That's the new narrative, Nina said, waving a hand. They flipped the script in high school. Remember the gala? What gala? The survivor dinner. Junior year? Your parents rented out the country club. It was a fundraiser for some pediatric illness. They had Ivy up on stage in this white dress, talking about how she survived the struggle. They never said what the struggle was. Everyone just assumed it was cancer or a heart defect. I stared at her. I wasn't there. I know, Nina said gently. I looked for you. I asked your dad where you were. He said you were at a specialized camp for behavioral issues. He made a sad face, like he was a martyr for dealing with you. The room spun slightly. Behavioral issues. While I was sitting in my bedroom, reading books and wondering why I wasn't allowed to go to the dinner, my father was downstairs telling half the town I was a delinquent to explain my absence. They erased me, I said quietly. They needed Ivy to be the hero, so they needed a villain, or at least a ghost. It was a weird night, Nina admitted. Ivy didn't look like a survivor. She looked like a doll. She just recited this speech about resilience. It felt scripted. I went back to work, but my mind was still at that dinner I had never attended. At 3 o'clock, I opened an email from a client asking for a revision on a shipping quote. It was a standard request, polite even, but when I read it, something inside me snapped. The frustration, the confusion, the feeling of being managed. It all boiled over. I typed a reply. If you had read the attachment I sent yesterday, you would see the quote is already there. Please check your inbox before wasting my time. I hit send. 10 seconds later, the regret hit me like a bucket of ice water. I tried to recall the message, but it was too late. My manager, Sarah, appeared at my cubicle 20 minutes later. She didn't look angry. She looked concerned, which was worse. Genesis? She asked softly. Can we chat? In her office, Sarah closed the door. The client forwarded me your email. That isn't like you. You are usually the most patient person on the team. I know, I said, my voice trembling. I'm so sorry. I'm having a family situation. Is everyone okay? Yes. No, I don't know. I looked at my hands. They were shaking again. Take the rest of the day, Sarah said. You look like you're about to shatter. Go home. Sleep. I walked to my car, feeling the hot shame burning my cheeks. This was what Grant meant. You're unstable, Jen. But was I unstable because I was born that way? Or was I unstable because they had spent 30 years poking holes in my reality until I couldn't hold water? When I got home, Tessa was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop. She took one look at my face and closed the computer. What happened? I snapped at a client, I said, dropping my bag. I'm losing it. Tess, maybe my dad is right. Maybe I am the problem. You are not the problem, Tessa said firmly. You are under siege. There is a difference. She opened a browser tab. I did some digging while you were at work. If the hospital is stonewalling you, we need to go to the state. The state? Vital records. You can order a certified long-form birth certificate directly from the state registry. It bypasses the hospital and your parents. It costs $30 and takes 3 days. Do it, I said. We filled out the form together. I entered my name, my date of birth, my parents' names. I paid the expedited shipping fee. 3 days later, a stiff cardboard envelope arrived. I didn't wait to get inside. I tore it open in the lobby of my apartment building. I pulled out the official paper, expecting the blue border, the state seal, the truth. The paper was white. It was a form letter, R.E., request for birth record /REED, Genesis, status, unable to fulfill. Reason, no record available under the supplied parameters. Please verify name, date, and county of birth, and resubmit. I leaned against the mailboxes. My knees weak, no record. I existed. I was standing here. I paid taxes. I had a driver's license, but the state of Massachusetts had no record of a Genesis Reed born on October 14th, 1993, to Grant and Marla Reed. I drove to my parents' house. I didn't care about the rules anymore, but when I got to Ridgehaven, I didn't go to the door. I sat in the driveway and called my father. I needed to hear his voice when I dropped the bomb. Genesis? Grant answered on the first ring. He sounded annoyed. I told you. We are decompressing from the weekend. Ivy is exhausted. I ordered my birth certificate from the state, I said. They don't have one. There was a silence on the other end. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of calculation. "You are being dramatic," Grant said smoothly. "The state archives are a mess. They digitized everything in the early 2000s and lost half the files. It happens all the time." "It doesn't happen all the time, Dad. It says no record found." "Who am I?" "You are my daughter," he said, his voice dropping to that comforting mahogany register. "Why are you doing this now, Jen? Ivy finally has stability. We had a beautiful event. Why do you have to pick at the scab the moment things are good?" "Because I'm not a scab," I said. "I'm a person, and I want to know why my medical file is restricted and why the state doesn't know I was born." "You are spiraling," Grant said. "I can hear it in your voice. You need to calm down before you say something you can't take back. I want to see the records, the real ones." "Stop this," he commanded. The veneer of kindness cracked. "Do not contact the hospital again, and do not, under any circumstances, contact the clinic. You are going to cause a problem for your sister's care plan, and I will not forgive that." "The clinic?" I asked. "What clinic? You said it was a foundation." Grant stopped. He realized he had slipped. "The medical partners," he corrected quickly. "Brightwell works with medical partners. Just leave it alone. Genesis, go to work. Live your life. Let us handle the complicated stuff." He hung up. The clinic. I drove home. But I didn't go inside. I went to a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and opened my laptop. I typed Brightwell Family Initiative into the search bar. The website was beautiful. It was clean, modern, and filled with stock photos of diverse, happy families holding hands in sunlit fields. The mission statement was vague but inspiring. Empowering families to overcome systemic health challenges through resilience and narrative reframing. There were photos from the gala. I saw Ivy on a stage, sitting in a wingback chair, holding a microphone. The caption read, "Founding member Ivy Reed discusses resilience advocacy." I clicked on the Board of Directors page. There were 5 names: Grant Reed, President, Marla Reed, Secretary, and 3 others: Dr. Eris Thorne, Sarah Jenkins, and Michael Vane. I searched for Dr. Eris Thorne. No LinkedIn, no hospital affiliation, no published papers, just a mention on the Brightwell site. I searched for Michael Vane. Nothing. I searched for the Brightwell headquarters address listed in the footer. 4400 Ridge Road, Suite 202. I pulled it up on Google Maps. It was a strip mall next to a dry cleaner. Suite 202 was a mailbox rental store. My parents were running a charity out of a P.O. box, with a board of ghosts, celebrating a birthday that was 7 years wrong. I went back to the Brightwell homepage. There was a tab labeled Get Involved. Under it, a calendar listed events. Tuesday, 7 p.m., volunteer orientation. Learn how you can help us tell the story. That was tonight. The address for the orientation wasn't the mailbox store. It was a community center in a town 20 minutes away. I didn't go home to change. I wanted to look like I came from work. I wanted to look like a young professional eager to give back. The community center was a beige brick building with fluorescent lights that hummed. I walked into room B, where a sign on a tripod read, Brightwell Initiative. Welcome. There were about 10 people there, mostly college students looking for resume padding and a few retirees. I sat in the back row. A woman in a crisp navy blazer stood at the front. She wasn't my mother. She was younger, efficient, with a smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. "Welcome, Ba," she said. "I'm so glad you're all here. Brightwell is growing fast, and we need people who are passionate about the narrative." She clicked a remote, and a slide appeared on the screen. It was the logo, the tree with the heart roots. "We partner exclusively with the Lake Marrow Recovery Clinic," she explained. "Our goal is to raise funds to subsidize treatment for families who don't fit the traditional insurance models. Lake Marrow Recovery Clinic." I wrote the name down. "Our founders, the Reed family, are the heart of our mission," the woman continued, She clicked to the next slide. It was a picture of Ivy and my parents. I was nowhere in the frame. Their story, the twin story, is what inspires our donors. It's a story of one child sacrificing for the other, of the difficult path to balance. She looked around the room. The twin story is our primary product. It's what sells the gala tickets. People love a survivor, but they love a sacrifice even more. It makes them feel relieved that someone else is carrying the burden. My blood ran cold. She didn't say Ivy's story. She said, the twin story. She said it was a product. I raised my hand. My voice was steady, though my heart was hammering. I'm sorry. I'm new to the organization. When you say sacrifice, what do you mean? What did the other twin sacrifice? The woman smiled. It was a pitying smile. Oh, the other twin, Genesis. She represents the cost of illness. She's the shadow. The narrative is that the family had to make hard choices to save the good twin. It's a metaphor, really. Donors love the duality. It's very biblical. I lowered my hand. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't even a black sheep. I was a prop. I was the villain in a fable my parents had written to sell tickets to a gala that funded a clinic I wasn't allowed to contact. My exclusion wasn't emotional. It wasn't because I was stressful or unstable. It was strategic. I was the shadow asset. If I showed up and looked normal, if I showed up and was kind and stable and employed, the story broke. The product failed. I left the orientation before the QA ended. I walked out into the cool night air, feeling a strange sense of vertigo. I had spent my entire adult life trying to be good enough to be let back in. I had apologized. I had diminished myself. I had accepted the scraps of affection they threw me. All the while, they were banking on my failure. My misery was a line item in their budget. I drove home in silence. When I got back to my apartment, it was midnight. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen. I needed to find the beginning. Brooks Lannett said I had signed something. I opened my email archive. I searched for Lannett. Nothing. I searched for Brooks. Nothing. I searched for sign. Hundreds of results. Leases. Work contracts. Petitions. I narrowed the date range. Brooks said, years ago. The medical event was in 2012. I was 18. I searched for emails from my father's old address. Grant R. at Reed Consulting, .net, . I scrolled back, way back, and then I found it, an email from August 2012, . I had been home from the hospital for 2 months, . I was getting ready to start community college because my parents said I wasn't ready to go away to a university. Subject, FW. Acknowledgement and release. Final version. It was forwarded from my father to me. The body of the email was short. Genera, please print, sign, and scan this back to me today. Brooks needs it for the insurance file so they can cover the hospital bills. Just standard stuff to protect your privacy. Love, Dad. I clicked the attachment. It was a PDF. I opened it. The document was 10 pages long. It was titled, Confidential Settlement and Image Release. I scrolled to the signature page. There was my signature. It was shaky. The loops of the G uneven. Looking like the handwriting of someone who was heavily medicated. I scrolled up to the text. The undersigned, Genesis A. Reed, hereby grants to the Reed Family Trust and its affiliates the perpetual, irrevocable right to use the undersigned's likeness, medical history, redacted or otherwise, and biographical narrative for the purpose of charitable solicitation and public relations. The undersigned acknowledges that said medical history may be altered for narrative cohesion. The undersigned waives all rights to inspect or approve the finished product. I read the line again. Medical history may be altered for narrative cohesion. I hadn't signed an insurance form. I had signed a permission slip for them to lie about me. I had given them the legal right to turn my life into a fictional tragedy so they could sell it. I sat back in my chair, the light from the screen illuminating the tears that were finally falling. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, Cold fury. I wasn't crazy. I was copyrighted. The office of Elena Price was not in a glass tower downtown. It was on the second floor of a converted brownstone in a neighborhood that sat on the border between gentrified and gritty, the kind of place where a boutique coffee shop operated next to a vacuum repair store. The waiting room smelled of old paper and peppermint tea. I sat in a leather chair that had seen better days, my hands folded tightly in my lap. When the door opened, Elena Price stepped out. She was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob and glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She didn't look like a shark. She looked like a librarian who had seen too much and had stopped being polite about it. "Genesis Reed?" she asked. Her voice was dry, like autumn leaves. "Come on back." Her office was cluttered but organized, stacks of files forming little skylines on her desk. She gestured for me to sit, then put on her glasses and pulled the printout I had brought toward her. It was the acknowledgement and release I had dug out of my email archive, the document I had signed at 18, giving my family permission to rewrite my life. Elena read it in silence. The only sound in the room was the ticking of a wall clock and the occasional hum of traffic outside. I watched her eyes scan the lines. She frowned once, then twice. Finally, she looked up. "You were 18 when you signed this?" "Yes," I said. "Just barely. It was 2 months after my birthday." "And you were recovering from a hospitalization?" "Yes. My parents said it was for the insurance. They said if I didn't sign it, the hospital bills wouldn't be covered." Elena took off her glasses and let them hang on the chain. "Genesis, this is not an insurance form. This is a rights grab. I have seen restrictive covenants in corporate mergers that are less aggressive than this." I felt a cold flush of validation. "They told me it was standard." "There is nothing standard about a clause that allows a third party to alter medical history for narrative cohesion," Elena said, tapping the paper with a manicured fingernail. "That is a license to lie. Essentially, you gave them permission to create a fictional character using your name and face, and then you agreed not to sue them for defamation when that character turned out to be the villain. Can we void it?" I asked. "Maybe," Elena said, leaning back. "Contracts signed under duress or while medically impaired are voidable if you were heavily medicated, or if they misrepresented the nature of the document, which, by telling you it was for insurance, they certainly did. We have a lane, but the statute of limitations is tricky. We need leverage." She opened a fresh legal pad. "We need to prove a pattern," she said. "The restricted birth file, the missing state records, the weird release form. It points to a systemic effort to control your identity. I want you to build a timeline. I want every medical event, every school transfer, every time you were told you were sick or unstable. We need to find the cracks in the story." "They are good at covering their tracks," I said. "My father has an attorney, Brooks Lannett." Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. "Brooks Lannett is a fixer. He handles cleanup for mid-sized nonprofits. If he is involved, your parents aren't just protecting a family secret. They are protecting an asset." She pushed the pad toward me. "Go home. Write it all down. And Genesis, don't use your regular email for this. If Lannett is the infrastructure, assume he has admin access to anything you set up under the family plan." I went home and started writing. The timeline was a painful thing to construct. It was like performing an autopsy on my own childhood. Age 6, chickenpox. Ivy goes to the hospital. I stay home. Mom says I am too much for the nurses. Age 10, school transfer. Ivy goes to private academy. I stay in public school. Dad says it is because I need socialization support. Age 14, the broken arm. I fell out of a tree. Dad waited 3 hours to take me to the ER because they had a dinner party. And then, the big one. Age 18, June 12th. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the date. I closed my eyes, trying to push through the fog that always surrounded that week in my memory. It was a Tuesday. We were having a family dinner. It was rare for us to eat together. Usually, Ivy and I ate in the kitchen while my parents worked, or Ivy was out at a therapy session. But that night, the table was set with the good china. My father poured me a glass of wine. I remember feeling grown up. I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe I am finally graduating to the adult table. I took 3 sips of the wine. It tasted bitter, metallic. 10 minutes later, the room started to tilt. My fork felt like it weighed 50 pounds. I looked across the table at Ivy. She was watching me, her eyes wide and terrified. She wasn't eating. "I don't feel good," I had mumbled. "It's the panic," my mother had said instantly. Her voice wasn't worried. It was clinical. "She is having an episode. Grant, get the car." I didn't remember the car ride. I didn't remember the admission. I woke up in a white room with soft walls, feeling like my brain was stuffed with cotton. They told me I had screamed. They told me I had been violent. I didn't remember violence. I only remembered the heavy, suffocating sleep. And when I came home, Brooks Lannett was there with the paperwork. I opened my eyes. The metallic taste of that wine was a memory, but the realization was new. I hadn't panicked. I had been drugged. They needed a medical event to justify the narrative. They needed the bad twin to have a breakdown so the good twin could have her survivor story. And if I wasn't naturally unstable enough, they made me unstable. My hand shook as I wrote it down. Involuntary sedation, coerced signature. The next day, I tackled the records. Elena had told me to push the third-party archive, ironclad storage. "Don't ask," she had said. "Demand. Use the preservation language." I sent a certified letter to Ironclad, referencing the Freedom of Information Act and patient access laws. I included a notarized copy of my driver's license. I paid the exorbitant rush fee. 4 days later, a packet arrived. It was thin, too thin. I sat on my sofa and slit the envelope open. Inside were 6 pages of photocopied records. The cover sheet read, "Responsive document /read, G/box 409. I flipped through them. There was a nursing log from the maternity ward, but the top half was cut off by a bad photocopy job. It showed a time, 4:12 a.m., and a weight, 6 pounds, 2 ounces. There was no mention of a second baby. I flipped to the next page. It was a physician's discharge note. Infant healthy, discharged to parents. The signature line at the bottom was blank. There was no delivery doctor named, no attending nurse, just a hospital stamp. Where was the twin registry? When twins are born, there is always a specific log noting the order of birth. The time interval. It is standard protocol. I held the paper up to the light. The date at the top of the page looked odd. The typeface for the year was slightly different from the typeface for the month. It was a composite. Someone had taken pieces of different records and taped them together before photocopying them to create a file that looked official but said absolutely nothing. I needed to talk to someone who didn't have a law degree or a medical license. I needed someone who dealt in the currency of the suburbs, gossip. I met Nina Caro at a diner halfway between the city and Ridgehaven. It was pouring rain, the kind of heavy gray downpour that made the world feel small and enclosed. Nina was already in a booth, stirring a cup of coffee. She looked nervous. "You really shouldn't be digging into this, Jen," she said as I slid into the seat opposite her. "My mom ran into your mom at the grocery store yesterday. Marla is agitated. She told everyone you're having a relapse." "I'm not having a relapse," I said, keeping my voice low. "I'm having an awakening. There's a difference." I pulled the thin packet of records out of my bag and slid it across the table. "This is what they sent me. No doctor's signature, no twin birth log. It's a ghost file." Nina looked at the papers, then pushed them back. "Jenna, I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me what you remember, not the official story, the whispers. You said your mom knew things." Nina sighed. Looking out the window at the rain-streaked parking lot, she bit her lip. "Okay," she said softly, "but you have to promise not to tell my mother I told you. She's afraid of your dad. Everyone is afraid of Grant." "I promise." "When we were little," Nina began. My mom used to volunteer at the hospital foundation. Before it closed, she knew some of the nurses who worked the night shift in the 90s. She leaned in closer. There was a rumor about the Reed twins. The nurses used to talk about it at the fundraisers after a few glasses of wine. What was the rumor? That they weren't sure which one they were bringing home. I frowned. What does that mean? Like they mixed us up? No, Nina said. Her eyes were dark, serious. Like, they weren't sure if there were two babies to bring home. The rumor was that the pregnancy was complicated, very complicated, and when Marla went into labor, the staff was prepared for a tragedy. But we're both here, I said. We're identical twins. We're fine. Are you? Nina asked. Look at you. Jen, you have no birth certificate. Your sister is a medical prop. Your parents have a charity based on a twin survivor story, but they never say what she survived. The rumor wasn't just about a mix-up. It was that the Reeds bought their way out of a problem, that they fixed something that went wrong in that delivery room. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Fix something. I need to know for sure, I said. I can't trust the papers. They've doctored everything. I reached into my bag and pulled out two small, rectangular boxes. They were DNA kits, the kind you buy at a drugstore for $90. I need you to do this, I said, sliding one box toward Nina. Me? Why? Control group, I said. If I just test myself, they can say the sample was contaminated, or that I'm misinterpreting the data. But if I test you, a totally unrelated friend, and I test myself, and we send them in at the same time, it creates a baseline. I need to know that the test works. And what are you going to do with the other one? Nina asked. I already swabbed myself, I said. I need to know who I am. Biology doesn't lie. Paperwork does. Nina looked at the box, then at me. She saw the desperation in my eyes, the exhaustion. She took the box. Okay, she said. But Jen, if the answer is something you don't like, you can't unknow it. I'm done with not knowing, I said. The next step was the hardest. I needed to see Ivy. I didn't want to ambush her. That would play right into the unstable narrative. I needed to be calm. I needed to be the sane one. I sent her a text, not to her current number, which I was sure was monitored, but to an old email address we had shared in high school for iTunes purchases. I hoped she still checked it on her iPad. Meet me at the Roasted Bean on 4th, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Just coffee, no drama, please. I didn't expect her to come, but on Tuesday at 10. I sat at a corner table, and the door opened. Ivy walked in. She looked like a magazine cover. She wore a camel-colored coat, oversized sunglasses, and a scarf that probably cost more than my car. But when she took off the glasses, I saw the dark circles she had tried to cover with concealer. She looked brittle, like spun sugar that would shatter if you touched it too hard. She scanned the room, saw me, and hesitated. Then she walked over and sat down. She didn't hug me. She didn't smile. Mom thinks I'm at the dermatologist, she said. Her voice was breathy, low. Hello to you too, I said gently. Thank you for coming. You shouldn't be here. Dad is furious. He says you're harassing the archive center. I'm just asking for my own records. Ivy, that's not harassment. That's citizenship. Ivy picked at the cuticle of her thumb. It was raw, bleeding slightly, a nervous habit she had since we were 6. It was the only crack in her perfect armor. Why are you doing this? She whispered. We were happy. Everything was fine. I wasn't happy, I said. And I don't think you are either. Look at you. You're shaking. I have a condition, she recited automatically. I get tremors when I'm overstimulated. It's part of the survivor profile. What survivor profile? I asked. What did you survive? Ivy? Tell me, was it cancer? Was it a heart defect? What is the medical diagnosis? Ivy opened her mouth, then closed it. She blinked, looking confused. It was a complex systemic failure, Multi-organ stress. You know that. That's a brochure slogan, I said. That's not a diagnosis. Do you remember the doctor? Do you remember the treatments? I was a baby, she snapped. Of course I don't remember. Okay, I said. Let's talk about things we do remember. Do you remember the fort we built in the backyard? The one with the blue tarp? Ivy stared at me. We didn't have a blue tarp. We had a playhouse. No, I said. The playhouse was for the photos. The fort was behind the shed. We stole Dad's staple gun. You stepped on a staple, and we were too scared to tell Mom. So I pulled it out with tweezers, and we put a Hello Kitty Band-Aid on it. Ivy's face went blank. It wasn't that she was denying it. It was that she honestly didn't know what I was talking about. I don't remember that, she said. How about the time we switched places in second grade? I pressed. Mrs. Miller's class. I took your spelling test because you hadn't studied. Stop it, Ivy hissed. She looked around the coffee shop, terrified someone was listening. You're trying to confuse me. Dad said you would do this. He said you would try to plant false memories to destabilize me. Destabilize you? I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Her skin was ice cold. Ivy, that is cult language. Sisters don't destabilize each other. They remind each other of the truth. She pulled her hand away as if I had burned her. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. It's not just about the past. It's the care plan. I have to stay stable. If I get stressed, the levels drop. What levels? I don't know, she cried, a little too loud. A barista looked over. Ivy lowered her voice. The clinic checks them. Lake Marrow. I go every Tuesday and Thursday for maintenance. Maintenance? Infusions, vitamins, neurosupport, whatever Grant pays for. She leaned in, her eyes wide. He pays a lot. Jenna, I see the invoices sometimes. It's thousands a month. Even though I'm recovered, I have to keep going. He says it's just paperwork to keep the donors comfortable, to show that the foundation is still active in my recovery. But sometimes I wonder. You wonder what? I wonder why I feel so foggy afterwards, she whispered. And why Brooks Lannett has to sign me out every time. Brooks picks you up from the clinic? He handles the release forms. He says it's legal protection. I felt sick. My sister wasn't just a prop. She was a patient in a cage built of money and mysterious infusions. Ivy, I said, you need to get your own blood work done, by a doctor who isn't on Dad's payroll. I can't, she said. If I leave the network, the insurance lapses, I can't afford it. I don't have a job. Jenna, I have a role. This is my job. She stood up, gathering her coat. She looked like she was about to flee a crime scene. Please stop digging, she said. Tears were standing in her eyes now. Brooks told me. He said if you keep pulling at the thread, the whole thing unravels. And he said, you won't like what you find at the bottom. I don't care about the bottom, I said. I care about you. Then let it be, she whispered. Please, before they make you disappear again. She turned and walked out. I watched her go, a golden girl in a golden trap. She was terrified, but she had given me a key. Lake Marrow, maintenance, infusions. They were keeping her sick, or they were keeping her compliant. I went home and waited. The waiting was the worst part. It felt like the air in my apartment was getting thinner. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate microwave dinners. But my mind was constantly running simulations of the truth. 2 weeks passed. Then, on a Friday evening, my phone buzzed. Email from Ancestry Truth Labs. Subject, your results are ready. I sat on my bed. The room was dark, lit only by the street lamp outside the window. I opened the app. First, I checked Nina's results. I had registered her kit under a fake name, Jane Doe A, and linked it to my account. Ethnicity, 40% Irish, 30% German. Matches, 50% match with mother, known. The test worked. It was accurate. I took a deep breath and clicked on my own profile. Genesis Reed. The ethnicity wheel spun and settled. North European, broadly British Isles. I scrolled down to the DNA matches section. I expected to see Ivy, even though she hadn't taken a test. If we were identical twins, my DNA should have flagged as a self/twin match against any other databases if she had ever been tested secretly, or at least shown the unique markers of monozygotic twinning, but there was a flag at the top of the report. A red exclamation point. Unusual relationship detected. I clicked on the details. The algorithm was confused. It wasn't flagging a match with a person, it was flagging the internal consistency of my own genome. Chimerism indicator. Low. Sibling match. Probability. Inconclusive. I stared at the screen. Then I saw the closest familial match. It wasn't a parent. It wasn't a cousin. It was a user named anonymous_user_882. Shared DNA. 26%. Estimated relationship. Half-sibling/grandparent/aunt/niece. 26%. If Ivy and I were identical twins, we would share 100%. If we were fraternal twins, we would share 50%, like regular siblings. 26% was half. I sat in the dark, the phone glowing in my hand. If I only shared 25% of my DNA with my twin, or if this anonymous match was the only link I had, it meant the fundamental building block of the Reed family story was a lie. We weren't identical. We weren't even full sisters. One of us belonged to someone else, and suddenly, the medical event, the clerical errors, and the maintenance visits took on a terrifying new logic. They weren't hiding a sickness. They were hiding a source. The DNA report sat on Elena Price's desk like a grenade that had been pulled, but had not yet detonated. 26%. I stared at the number until it blurred. The fluorescent light of the office hummed overhead, a low, insectile sound that seemed to vibrate in my teeth. "It is not a smoking gun," Elena said. Her voice was level, stripping the emotion away from the fact. Legally speaking, consumer DNA tests are inadmissible without a chain of custody, and biologically, 26% is a messy number. It suggests a relationship, but it rules out identical twinning. It even rules out fraternal twinning. Usually, it looks more like a half-sibling, or an aunt and niece. "We are supposed to be identical," I said. "We have the same face. We have the same birthday. Allegedly." "Phenotypes can be deceiving," Elena said. "And if you dig deep enough into medical anomalies, you find chimerism, vanishing twins, absorbed DNA, but we are not doctors. Genesis. We are looking for liability." She pushed the paper aside and leaned forward, clasping her hands on top of the file. "The biology is a rabbit hole. If you go down it, they will drown you in expert witnesses and medical jargon. They will say the test is flawed. They will say you are misinterpreting the data because you are unstable. We need something harder than blood. We need paper." "I have paper," I said. "I have the fake birth record." "We need the money," Elena corrected. "If this is a fraud, there is a ledger. If Brightwell is monetizing a story that isn't true, there is a paper trail of where that money goes: insurance billing, clinic authorizations, foundation filings. I want you to stop looking at your sister as a mirror and start looking at her as an asset. Who gets paid when she tells the story?" I left her office with a new mandate. I wasn't looking for my family anymore. I was auditing them. That night, I sat at my laptop with a bottle of wine I didn't open. I pulled up the public tax filings for the Brightwell Family Initiative. Nonprofits have to file Form 990-Sh. They are public records. I downloaded 5 years of returns. The numbers were staggering. Brightwell brought in over $2 million a year in donations. The donor list was redacted, but the expense categories were clear. Program services, $400,000. Administrative, $300,000. Consulting fees, $1.2 million. I frowned. More than half the budget was going to consulting? I scrolled down to the vendor list. The primary recipient of the consulting fees was a company called Lynette Strategic Solutions. LLC. I typed the name into the state business registry. The registered agent for Lannett Strategic Solutions was Brooks Lannett. The business address was the same suite as his law office. My father's attorney wasn't just defending the family. He was on the payroll. He was draining the charity dry. I sat back, the cold light of the screen illuminating the dark room. Brooks Lannett wasn't just cleaning up the mess. He was the infrastructure. He was the one keeping the story alive because the story was his paycheck. I needed to see the product in action. The Brightwell annual gala was 2 days away. I hadn't been invited, obviously, but Nina Caro had. Her real estate brokerage had bought a table, and when I called her, asking for a favor, she hesitated only for a second. "You have to promise not to make a scene," Nina said. "If you flip a table, I lose my license." "I won't flip a table," I said. "I just want to watch." I wore a black dress, high-necked and severe, with my hair pulled back so tight it pulled at my temples. I didn't want to look like Ivy. I wanted to look like her shadow. The gala was held at the Ridgehaven Country Club. Valets in white jackets were parking Teslas and Range Rovers. The air smelled of expensive perfume and damp grass. We walked in through the main doors. The ballroom was transformed into a sanctuary of resilience. There were towering floral arrangements of white lilies, Ivy's flower, and oversized prints of the Brightwell logo projected onto the walls. I kept my head down, sticking close to Nina's shoulder. The room was crowded with the elite of the suburbs. Doctors, developers, local politicians. They were drinking champagne and talking about impact. We found Nina's table near the back. I sat facing the stage. At 8 o'clock. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the podium. My father walked out. Grant Reed looked magnificent. He wore a tuxedo that fit perfectly, his silver hair gleaming in the spotlight. He smiled, a humble, weary smile that said, "I have carried a heavy burden, but I do it for love." "Thank you," he said, his voice rich and warm. "Thank you all for being here. For 25 years. Marla and I have walked a path we never expected. A path of fear, of uncertainty, but ultimately, of hope." He didn't mention me. He didn't say, "We have 2 daughters." He just said, "The path." "Tonight," he continued, "we celebrate the victory of the human spirit. Please welcome the inspiration behind the Brightwell Initiative. My daughter, Ivy." The room erupted in applause. People stood up. Ivy walked onto the stage. She was wearing white. Of course she was. It was a floor-length gown that made her look like a bride or a sacrifice. She walked slowly, hesitantly, clutching the podium as if she might faint. "Thank you," she whispered into the microphone. The room went dead silent. "I don't remember much of the early years," Ivy said. Her voice was trembling, but it was a practiced tremor. It was the tremble of a bird that knows it is being watched. "I only remember the fear, the feeling that my body was a cage." She looked out at the audience, her eyes wide and wet. "But my parents, they didn't give up. They fought the insurance companies. They fought the doctors who said there was no hope. They built a sanctuary for me." She paused. "And because of them, I am here, because of you. And your generosity. Other families can find that same sanctuary at the Lake Marrow Recovery Clinic. We are not just saving bodies, we are saving stories." The applause was thunderous. I watched women at the next table wiping tears from their eyes. I watched a man write a check. I felt a strange, cold detachment. They were applauding a ghost. The Ivy on stage was a construct, and the tragedy she had survived was a script written by the man sitting in the front row, counting the consulting fees. I stood up. "Where are you going?" Nina hissed, grabbing my wrist. "I need some air," I said. I didn't go outside. I went to the side corridor, near the kitchen entrance, where I had seen Brooks Lannett slip away during the speech. He was standing near a service exit, checking his phone. He looked bored. The family attorney wasn't crying over the speech. He was checking the wire transfer. I walked up to him. "Hello, Brooks?" He jumped slightly, then composed himself. He slid his phone into his pocket and turned to me with that same smooth, condescending smile he had used in my parents' driveway. "Genesis," he said, "I didn't see your name on the guest list." "I'm a +1, I said. "It's amazing what you can get into if you know the right people." "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice dropping. "It's distressing for your parents." "They look pretty happy," I said, gesturing toward the ballroom where the applause was still dying down. "They just raised a lot of money." I took a step closer. I wasn't shaking this time. "I have a question." "Brooks." "You have many questions, Genesis, and I have advised you that your curiosity is becoming a liability." "What did I sign?" I asked it quietly. "Precisely." Brooks didn't blink. "I don't know what you mean." "When I was 18, I said, "the insurance forms, the ones you brought to the house while I was still dizzy from the sedation. What did I sign?" Brooks sighed. A long, weary exhalation. He looked at me with pity. "It was a standard release, Genesis, to protect Ivy's privacy. You were volatile back then. We needed to ensure that you wouldn't exploit the family's private medical history for attention." "Exploit?" I laughed. A harsh sound. "You just charged that room $1,000 a plate to exploit a medical history that isn't even real." Brooks's smile vanished. His eyes went hard. "Be very careful," he said softly. "You are walking a fine line. Ivy is a medically protected person. If you start making public allegations, if you start harassing her or the foundation, we will have no choice but to take protective measures." "Is that a threat?" "It is a legal reality. You have a documented history of instability. Genesis, we have the hospital records. We have the police reports from when you were a teenager." "I never had a police report." "Didn't you?" Brooks tilted his head. "Memory is a funny thing when you are unwell. Go home, before you embarrass yourself." He turned and walked back into the ballroom. I stood in the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. Police reports. They were manufacturing a criminal record. They were building a file to discredit me before I even opened my mouth. I left the gala. I didn't say goodbye to Nina. The next morning, I was at Elena's office when she unlocked the door. "He threatened me," I said as we walked down the hall. "He said I have police reports. He said I'm unstable." Elena didn't look surprised. She went to her desk and pulled a file from her drawer. "I got it," she said. "Got what?" "The release, the one you signed." She slid a document across the desk. It was a photocopy, grainy and dark. Acknowledgement of narrative rights and waiver of privacy. I stared at the title. It didn't say insurance. I read the text. It was dense, full of legalese about perpetual license and fictionalization of events. And then, halfway down the third page, Elena pointed to a paragraph. "The undersigned acknowledges that the family medical narrative may require the attribution of certain behavioral or medical characteristics to the undersigned. For the purpose of contrast and dramatic arc, the undersigned hereby consents to the use of their likeness in negative or antagonistic contexts within the scope of the Foundation's storytelling." "Negative or antagonistic contexts," I read aloud. My voice sounded hollow. "You gave them permission to make you the villain," Elena said. "You signed a contract agreeing to be the bad twin so they could sell the good twin." "I didn't know," I whispered. "I swear, I didn't read it. Dad just said sign." "Look at the signature," Elena said. I looked. It was my name, Genesis A. Reed. But the line trailed off at the end, the ink blotchy. "That is the signature of someone who is impaired," Elena said. "If we can prove you were medicated, if we can prove you were under the influence of sedatives administered by them, we can void this. But that is why they call you unstable. Genesis, don't you see? If you are crazy, then you can't claim you were tricked. You were just confused. They need you to be unstable. It is their insurance policy against this document being thrown out." I felt a wave of nausea. My entire identity, the difficult child, the anxious sister, wasn't just a family dynamic. It was a legal strategy. "I need to talk to Ivy," I said. She won't talk to you, Elena said. Brooks has her on a leash. She's scared, I said. I saw her on that stage. She looked like she was drowning. I didn't call Ivy. I went to the one place I knew she went alone, the library. When we were kids, before the medical events started, Ivy used to hide in the local library. She loved the smell of the stacks. It was the only place she felt safe from Marla's constant hovering. I parked my car and waited. It was a long shot, but on Wednesdays, the clinic was closed. At 2 p.m, a silver Lexus pulled in. Ivy got out. She was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, trying to look like a normal person. She walked into the library. I followed. I found her in the biography section, sitting on the floor at the end of an aisle, reading a book about the Kennedys. I sat down next to her. She flinched so hard she dropped the book. Don't run, I said quietly. You followed me, she whispered. She looked at the door, expecting Brooks to burst in. I saw you at the gala, I said. You were good. You almost made me believe it. Go away. Jen. Ivy. Listen to me. I saw the financials. Brooks is taking the money. Millions of dollars. It's not going to the clinic. It's going to him. Ivy hugged her knees to her chest. I don't care about the money. You should, because you're the one working for it. You're the one getting infusions of God knows what to keep you docile. It's vitamins, she said automatically. Is it? Or is it something to make you foggy? Something to make you forget that you don't actually have a disease? Ivy turned to me. Her face was pale, stripped of the gala makeup. I do have a disease, she said, her voice trembling. I have fragility. If I stop the treatments, I get sick. I get the tremors. I get confused. That's withdrawal, Ivy, I said. That's not a disease. That's dependence. She stared at me, her eyes wide with a terror she couldn't name. What do you want from me? She whispered. I want you to tell me the truth. About the birth. About the paperwork. I can't, she said. Tears spilled over her lashes. I have too much to lose. Jen, you don't understand. I have a house. I have a reputation. I have people who look up to me. If the story isn't true, then who am I? I'm just a fraud. I'm just a girl who took money to lie. You didn't take it, I said. They gave it to you. They groomed you for this. Brooks says it doesn't matter, she said. He says the truth is whatever people believe. He says if you destroy this, you destroy me. You'll burn me down. Jen, is that what you want? Do you hate me that much? I don't hate you, I said. I'm trying to save you. I don't want to be saved, she said, standing up. I want to be safe, and you make me unsafe. She ran out of the aisle. I didn't chase her. I stayed on the floor, looking at the book she had dropped. The Kennedys, a family of secrets and tragedies. I went back to the timeline. Elena said we needed to prove I was medicated when I signed the release. I pulled up the date again, June 12th, 2012. I went to the pharmacy chain my parents used. I walked up to the counter. I need a printout of my prescription history, I said. From 2012. The pharmacist looked annoyed but typed in my info. That's archived. It'll take a minute. She printed out a long strip of paper. I scanned it. Antibiotics, allergy meds, and then, on June 12th, lorazepam, 2 milligrams, 30 tablets, lorazepam, a strong sedative. Who picked this up? I asked, pointing to the line. It doesn't say, the pharmacist said. Wait, there's a signature on the digital log. She clicked a few keys and turned the screen toward me. The signature was a scribble, but it wasn't mine, and it wasn't my father's sharp architectural scrawl. It was a loop with a jagged line through it. Can you print that image? I asked. Sure. I took the printout. I knew that signature. I had seen it on every report card in elementary school. It was my mother's signature when she was in a hurry. Marla had picked up the sedatives on the day of the dinner. She had drugged me. She had created the panic episode so Brooks could get the signature he needed to sell my life rights. I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel so hard my fingers ached. When I got to my apartment, I saw a car parked in front of the building, a red Mercedes. My mother was leaning against the hood. She looked smaller than she had at the gala. She was wearing jeans and a cashmere sweater, trying to look approachable, maternal. "Genesis," she said as I walked up the path. "Get off my property." "Mom, we need to talk," she said. Her voice broke. She reached out a hand. "Please, I'm worried about you." "You're worried about the audit," I said. "You're worried about the fraud." "It's not fraud," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's complexity. You don't understand the pressure we were under, the medical bills, the uncertainty. We had to do something to survive." "So you sold us?" I asked. "You sold Ivy as a saint and me as a sinner?" "We gave you a role," Marla said. "We gave you a place in the family. We protected you." "Protected me?" I laughed. "You erased me. You drugged me." I held up the pharmacy printout. "I know about the lorazepam. Mom, I know you picked it up the day I fainted." Marla's face went white. The tears stopped instantly. "That was for your own good," she said coldly. "You were out of control." "I was eating dinner," I said. "I was 18. Marla reached into her purse. She pulled out an envelope. It was thick. "Grant wants you to have this," she said. "It's a check. $25,000. It's a start. Jen, you can move. You can go to grad school. You can go to Europe. Just go somewhere else." "You're buying me out?" "We are offering you a fresh start," she said. "Take the money. Stop talking to that lawyer. Stop digging into the past. It's gone. Why ruin everyone's life for a truth that nobody cares about?" I looked at the envelope. It was heavy. It represented freedom. I could leave. I could disappear. I could let them have their fake charity and their fake daughter and their fake life. "Nobody cares about the truth?" I asked. "They want the story," Marla said. "They want the hope. Why take that away from them?" I took the envelope from her hand. Marla smiled, a flicker of relief crossing her face. I ripped the envelope in half. Then I ripped it again. I let the pieces of the check fall onto the sidewalk. "I don't want your money," I said. "I want my name back." Marla stared at the confetti on the ground. She looked at me with a hatred so pure it took my breath away. "You are making a terrible mistake," she whispered. "Grant will not let you destroy this." "Grant can't stop me," I said, "and neither can Brooks." "You have no idea what they are capable of," she said. And for the first time, I thought she might be telling the truth. She wasn't threatening me. She was warning me. She got in her car and drove away. I went upstairs and called Elena. "I have the pharmacy record," I said. "Marla picked up the meds, and she just tried to bribe me with 25 grand to drop it." "Okay," Elena said. Her voice was sharp, energized. "That changes the landscape. We have proof of coercion. We have proof of premeditation. So we sue?" "We can," Elena said. "But Genesis, listen to me carefully. If we file this, it becomes public record. The release, the drugs, the fake charity, it will all come out. That's what I want." "Is it?" Elena asked. "Because once you ring this bell, you can't unring it. You won't just be exposing a mean family. You will be exposing a criminal enterprise. Brooks Lannett will come for you. He will sue you for defamation, for breach of contract, for harassment. He will drag your name through the mud. He will use every instability narrative he has planted for 20 years. "I know," I said. "And Ivy," Elena added softly. "If this comes out, Ivy goes down with the ship. She is the face of the fraud. She could face liability too, or at the very least, total public humiliation." I thought of Ivy in the library, terrified and fragile. I thought of the way she had looked at me, begging for safety, but then I thought of the signature on the release form. Negative or antagonistic contexts. They had built a machine to grind me down so they could build her up. If I stopped now, the machine would keep running. She's already drowning, I said. Maybe the only way to save her is to blow up the ship. Okay, Elena said. Then we don't just sue. We go for the throat. We go after the foundation. How? We file a preservation notice, Elena said, and we send a demand letter to the board of directors. We tell them we know the narrative is false, and we have the DNA and the drug logs to prove it. We give them 48 hours to release you from the contract and retract the narrative. And if they don't? Then we file the complaint, Elena said, and we attach the pharmacy log as Exhibit A. I hung up the phone. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. The pieces of the check were still there. Blowing in the wind, I wasn't afraid anymore. I felt a strange, cold clarity. I had spent my whole life wondering why I wasn't wanted. Now I knew. I wasn't unwanted. I was dangerous, and I was about to prove them right. I chose a park for the meeting. It was a reclaimed industrial space on the edge of the city, full of rust-colored sculptures and tall, unkempt grasses. It was open. It was public. There were no walls for Brooks Lanet to hide behind, and the wind was strong enough to carry our voices away from anyone who might be listening. Ivy arrived 10 minutes late. She wore a trench coat belted tightly at the waist and oversized sunglasses that swallowed her face. She walked with the skittish, jerky movements of a creature that expects a trap. I sat on a concrete bench, my hands resting on a manila envelope. I did not stand up to hug her. We were past that. You said you had proof, Ivy said, stopping 5 feet away. She didn't sit. Brooks says you are manufacturing evidence. He says you are having a break from reality. Sit down, Ivy, I said. My voice was calm, the voice of someone discussing the weather. If I wanted to hurt you, I would have sent this to the Chronicle. I called you because I'm giving you a chance to see the gun before it goes off. She hesitated, then sat on the far edge of the bench, keeping her body angled away from me. I opened the envelope. I did not speak. I simply laid the documents out on the concrete between us, weighing them down with a stone so the wind wouldn't take them. First, the pharmacy log from 2012, lorazepam, dispensed to Marla Reed. Look at the date, I said. June 12th, the day of the family dinner, the day I supposedly had a panic attack that required sedation. Marla picked up 30 pills 3 hours before dinner. Ivy looked at the paper. Her jaw tightened. Mom takes anxiety medication. Everyone knows that. I laid down the second document, the acknowledgement and release. Read the highlighted paragraph, I said. I signed this while I was medicated with the drugs Marla bought. It gives the Foundation the right to portray me in antagonistic contexts to support the narrative. It's a casting contract. Ivy, I was cast as the villain. Ivy stared at my signature. She touched the paper with a gloved finger. You were always difficult. Jenna, they didn't need a contract for that. Did they? I asked. Or did they need to make sure I couldn't sue them when they blamed me for your stress? I laid down the third document, the tax filings for the Brightwell Family Initiative. $1.2 million in consulting fees paid to Lanet Strategic Solutions, I said. The clinic isn't getting the money. Ivy, he is draining the Foundation. You are the show pony, and he is the one collecting the ticket sales. Ivy looked at the numbers. She blinked rapidly, her breathing shallow. She trailed off. This is business. I don't understand taxes. You understand lying, I said softly. You've been doing it for 25 years. I am sick, she snapped, turning to me, her face crumbling. I have a condition. I have the tremors. I have the fog. You think I want to be like this? I think they are keeping you like this, I said. I think the maintenance visits are keeping you sick, so the checks keep clearing. You aren't a patient, Ivy. You are an asset. And assets don't get better. They have to stay broken so they can be fixed over and over again. Ivy stood up. She paced a tight circle in the gravel, her hands gripping her hair. "Stop it," she whispered. "Stop making sense. If this is true, if they did this—" She stopped and looked at me. Her eyes were terrified, stripped of all the glamour and the polish. It was the look of a child who realizes the monsters are not under the bed, but tucking her in. "If the story changes," she asked, her voice breaking, "who am I?" The question hung in the cold air. "You are Ivy," I said. "You are my sister. You are 32 years old, not 25, and you are free." She shook her head. "I don't know how to be free. I only know how to be the survivor." She reached into her oversized tote bag. Her hand was trembling so badly she had trouble working the zipper. She pulled out a red plastic folder. It looked innocuous, something you would buy for a high school history project. But it was sealed with heavy packing tape. "Grant gave me this," she said. She didn't call him Dad. She called him Grant. 3 years ago, when the foundation started getting national press, he told me to keep it in my safe. He said it was for emergencies. He said, "If anything ever happens to me or Brooks, or if the media starts asking the wrong questions, open this and follow the instructions." "Did you open it?" "No," she whispered. "I was too scared. But last night, I held it up to the light. I could see my name, and yours." She thrust the folder at me. "Take it," she said. "I can't read it. I can't know what's in there. Jen, if I know, I can't go back." "You're already back," I said, taking the folder. "You're here with me." "I'm not with you," she said, backing away. I'm just tired of the fog." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the tall grass without looking back. I took the folder to Elena Price. We sat in her office with the door locked. Elena used a letter opener to slice through the packing tape. The sound was loud in the quiet room. She slid the contents out. It wasn't just a file. It was a playbook. The cover sheet was titled, "Contingency Protocol, Asset Protection and Narrative Containment." Elena put on her glasses. We read it together. It was a step-by-step guide on how to destroy me. Scenario A. Subject G attempts public disclosure. Response: deploy mental health crisis press release. Template attached. Contact Dr. Aris Thorne to release redacted psychiatric summary from 2012. Leverage police contacts to request wellness check on Subject G to establish paper trail of instability. I felt the blood drain from my face. "They have a template," I whispered. "They have a press release written and waiting to say I'm crazy." Elena flipped the page. Scenario B. Subject: I show signs of non-compliance. Response: increase maintenance dosage of compound beta. Isolate from external stressors. Brooks Lanet to assume power of attorney under emergency medical proxy clause. Subject Y, Elena said. Ivy. They refer to her as a subject. Compound beta, I said. That's what they're giving her. It's not vitamins. This is conspiracy, Elena said, her voice hard. This is medical battery. This is fraud. She looked up at me. Genesis, this proves everything. They didn't just exclude you because you were difficult. They built a system where your exclusion was a structural necessity. You are the scapegoat. The engine runs on your silence. They planned it, I said. They sat in a room and typed this up. Grant, Brooks, my mother. Your mother is listed here, Elena said, pointing to the bottom of the page. Distribution list. G. Reed. B. Lanet. M. Reed. I closed my eyes. I had always thought my mother was a victim of my father's controlling nature. I thought she was weak, but she was on the distribution list. She knew. She had agreed to the plan that involved increasing my sister's dosage and painting me as a lunatic. What do we do? I asked. We stop playing defense, Elena said. But we have to be smart. If we file a lawsuit today, they will trigger Scenario A. They will release the psychiatric summary. They will paint you as a jealous sister off her meds. The media loves a crazy woman's story more than they love a corruption story. So we let them get away with it? No, Elena said. We corner them. We send a demand letter, not a lawsuit, a warning shot. We tell them we have the folder. We tell them we have the pharmacy logs. We demand they preserve every document, every email, every text message, and we demand a full accounting of the funds. They'll fight back, I said. They will panic, Elena corrected. People like this rely on control. When you show them you have their playbook, they don't know what to do. They make mistakes. We drafted the letter that afternoon. It was 4 pages of pure, distilled legal aggression. It demanded the immediate preservation of all records related to the medical treatment of Ivy Reed and Genesis Reed. It demanded the unredacted financial ledgers of the Brightwell Family Initiative, and it demanded that Brightwell cease and desist from using my likeness or narrative in any fundraising materials. We sent it via courier. Certified. High priority. The response was immediate. My phone rang at 8 o'clock that night. It was my father. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message sitting on my kitchen floor. The lights off. Genesis. His voice wasn't the warm, mahogany baritone he used for donors. It was low, raspy, vibrating with a cold fury I had never heard before. I received your letter. I don't know who is advising you, but you are playing a game you do not understand. You think you are looking for truth? You are holding a match in a room full of gasoline. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. If you do this, if you force our hand, you won't just lose us. You won't just lose the family. You will lose everyone. We will bury you. Genesis, not because we want to, but because we have to. Think very carefully about your next move. For your sister's sake. The line went dead. You will lose everyone. It wasn't a father warning a daughter. It was a CEO threatening a whistleblower. I saved the voicemail. I emailed a copy to Elena. The next morning, I saw the notification on my phone. Brightwell Family Initiative. Board meeting. Emergency session. I knew this because I had subscribed to their public calendar updates years ago. A masochistic habit I had never broken. Usually, the calendar was full of gala prep and donor luncheon. Today. It was just emergency session. Closed door. They were scrambling. At noon. There was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Marla. I opened the door, leaving the chain on. I told you to stay away, I said. Grant doesn't know I'm here, she said. Her eyes were red, rimmed with dark shadows. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. He's in a meeting with Brooks. They are destroying hard drives. Genesis. They are shredding things. I sent a preservation notice, I said. If they destroy evidence, that's a felony. Do you think they care? Marla whispered. Brooks has done this before. He knows how to wipe a server. You have to stop. Why? I asked. Because you're afraid of going to jail? Because you are hurting Ivy, Marla cried. She called me this morning. She was hysterical. She asked me if she was real. Do you know what that does to a mother? Do you know what it does to a daughter to be erased? I shot back. I undid the chain and opened the door, stepping into the hallway so I was face to face with her. You picked up the drugs. Mom, I saw the log. Marla flinched. She looked down at her hands, the diamonds on her fingers catching the hallway light. We didn't have a choice, she said. The twins, the birth, it was messy. We spent everything. We were drowning in debt, and then Brooke saw how people reacted to Ivy, how they loved the idea of the miracle. He said we could build something. He said it would secure her future. And my future? I asked. What about me? Marla looked up, her face twisted in a sudden burst of anger, the raw, ugly truth finally breaking the surface. You were never supposed to be the face of anything. Genesis. You were too sharp, too loud. You didn't look like a victim. You looked like trouble. She took a breath, and the words poured out, acidic and vile. Ivy needed the story more. She was weaker. She needed the protection. You could survive on your own. We gave the resources to the one who needed them. That is what parents do. I stared at her. The logic was breathtaking. It was a utilitarian calculus applied to human souls. You didn't give her resources, I said. You gave her a script, and you made me the villain because every good story needs a monster. And you are proving us right, Marla spat. Look at you, destroying your own family for… what? Clarity? You're selfish. Genesis, you have always been selfish. Get out, I said. We will fight you, Marla said, backing away. Grant has friends, judges, senators. You are one angry girl with a cheap lawyer. You will not win. I don't need to win, I said. I just need to turn on the lights. She left. I went back inside and locked the door. I was shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. Children are roles, not people. That was the Reed family motto. Ivy was the product. I was the risk. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ivy. Did we go to Disney World when we were 6? I stared at the screen. It was a random question. I typed back, no. We went to a motel in Frantic City because Dad had a meeting. It rained the whole time and we watched cable TV. 3 dots appeared. Ivy. The photo album has pictures of us in front of the castle. Me. Those are photoshopped. Ivy. Dad bought a scanner that year. Look at the shadows. They don't match. There was a long pause. Ivy. I checked the dates in the album. There is a gap. From 2005 to 2007. There are no pictures of me. Me. That was when you were in treatment, or that's what they told people. Really, you were just at home, being homeschooled because they were rewriting your history. Ivy. I feel like I'm waking up in a stranger's house. Me. You're waking up in your own house. It's just been staged. She didn't reply. But the questions were starting. The facade was cracking from the inside. I knew what I had to do next. The demand letter was a legal maneuver. But Marla was right. Grant and Brooks would bury it in procedure. They would shred the drives. They would stall until the money was moved and the records were clean. I couldn't wait for the courts. I needed witnesses. I pulled up the Brightwell website again. Upcoming event. Community Impact Night. Friday, 7 p.m., Ridgehaven Town Hall. It wasn't a gala. It was a town hall. Press would be there. Local donors. The board. It was the perfect stage. I wasn't going to go there to beg for a seat at the table. I wasn't going to go there to scream. I was going to go there to testify. I called Elena. I'm going to the Impact Night, I said. Genesis, that is dangerous, Elena warned. If you step foot on the property, they can have you arrested for trespassing. They might have a restraining order ready. It's a public building, I said. Town hall, they can't ban me from a municipal building. They will try to provoke you, Elena said. They will try to make you look crazy. Brooks will be there. He will push every button you have. Let him push, I said. I'm bringing the folder. Make copies, Elena said. Digital and physical. And Genesis? Don't go alone. I'm taking Nina, I said. And I want you on speed dial. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I scanned every page of the emergency folder. I uploaded the files to a secure cloud server and set a dead man switch. If I didn't log in every 24 hours, the link would automatically email to the Boston Globe and the New York Times. I was done being a victim. I was becoming an operator. On Thursday night, the night before the event, I received an email. It came to my personal address. The sender was just a volunteer, 22@protonmail.com. There was no subject line, just an attachment. I opened it. It was a memo on Brightwell letterhead, dated 2 days ago. To Board of Directors, from Brooks Lannett, Risk Assessment, Unmanaged Twin Variable. The unmanaged twin variable, subject G, has escalated beyond projected containment models. Legal threats have been issued. Recommended course of action is immediate neutralization of credibility. Asset I, Ivy, is showing signs of contamination. Interaction between the variables must be severed immediately. We are initiating the jealousy narrative with friendly media contacts tomorrow. Be prepared for questions regarding Subject G's history of violence. Attached. Draft police report. Fabricated/backdated. For domestic disturbance in 2015. I stared at the screen. Unmanaged twin variable. They didn't use my name. I was a variable in an equation, a risk factor, an object, and they were fabricating a police report to say I was violent. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, heavy and solid. They thought they could write the ending. They thought they could type up a PDF and dictate my reality. I hit print. I watched the page slide out of the printer. Immediate neutralization of credibility. I picked up the paper. "Neutralize this," I whispered. I put the memo in my folder, right next to the pharmacy logs and the crisis plan. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just be crashing a party. I would be burning down the theater. Ridgehaven Town Hall was a building designed to project stability. It was all red brick and white pillars, an architectural promise that nothing within its walls could ever be messy or unplanned. Tonight, it was the stage for the Brightwell Family Initiative's Community Impact Night. I parked my car 3 blocks away. I didn't want them to see my license plate. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, but I didn't look crazy. I wore a black turtleneck and gray trousers. My hair pulled back in a low, severe bun. I wore no makeup to hide the circles under my eyes. I wanted them to see the fatigue. I wanted them to see the cost of their lie. I picked up the black folder on the passenger seat. "Ready?" Nina asked from the passenger side. She looked terrified, clutching her purse like a shield. "You don't have to go in," I said. "You can wait here." "No," Nina said, taking a shaky breath. "I was there for the survivor dinner in high school. I watched them erase you then. I'm not watching them do it again." We walked to the hall in silence. The air was crisp, smelling of fallen leaves and wood smoke. It was a perfect New England autumn night, the kind my parents used as a backdrop for their family portraits. The lobby was crowded. There were banners standing on easels. Resilience, hope, family, and a check-in table manned by 2 cheerful young women in Brightwell polos. I walked up to the table. "Name?" one of them asked, smiling. "Genesis Reed," I said. The smile faltered. The girl looked down at her list, then back at me. She didn't need to check the list. She had been briefed. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I don't see—" "I'm not on the list," I said quietly. "But I am a member of the founding family, and I need to speak with the board before the presentation starts." I can't let you in," she said. She was looking over my shoulder, signaling for help. "I don't want to go into the auditorium," I said. "I want to go to the conference room, the one behind the stage. Tell Brooks Lannett I am here. Tell him I have the twin variable memo." The girl froze. She didn't know what that meant, but she knew the tone of authority. She picked up her radio. 2 minutes later, a security guard appeared. He wasn't aggressive, but he was firm. "Ms. Reed," he said, "please follow me." He led Nina and me down a side corridor, away from the donors sipping wine in the lobby. We were taken to a small, glass-walled meeting room near the mayor's office. It was quiet here. The hum of the event was muffled, distant. I sat at the head of the table. I placed the black folder in front of me. I took out my phone and set it on the table. "I am recording this meeting," I said to the empty room. "For my own protection." The door opened. My father walked in first. Grant Reed looked impeccable in a navy suit, but his face was tight, his jaw set in a hard line. Brooks Lannett followed, closing the door softly behind him. He looked less like a lawyer and more like a man arriving to clean up a chemical spill. "Turn off the phone, Genesis," Brooks said pleasantly. "No," I said. "Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, but we are in a municipal building during a public event. I have a right to document my interaction with public figures." Grant sat down opposite me. He didn't look at Nina. He looked only at me, his eyes cold and assessing. "You have 5 minutes," Grant said. Then I am having you removed for trespassing. I'm not trespassing, I said. I'm negotiating. Brooks sat next to Grant. He placed a briefcase on the table and clicked the latches open. We received your demand letter, Brooks said. It was colorful. Your attorney has a flair for the dramatic. She has a flair for the law, I said. Brooks smiled, a thin, patronizing expression. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. It was bound in blue paper. We are prepared to make this go away. Genesis, we understand that you are hurting. We understand that you feel left out. It is a terrible thing. Sibling rivalry. He slid the document across the table. This is a settlement agreement, Brooks said. It provides for a one-time payment of $200,000, tax-free, structured as a pain and suffering settlement to avoid gift taxes, $200,000. In exchange, Brooks continued, his voice smooth as oil, you will sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement, you will retract your demand letter, you will turn over all copies of the stolen files you claim to possess, and, he paused, and you will join us on stage tonight, just for a moment, a photo op, a reconciliation. We will frame it as you completing your own journey of healing. It will be very moving. The donors will love it. I looked at the blue folder. Then I looked at my father. Healing, I repeated. You want to pay me to hug you so you can sell more tickets. We want to help you, Grant said. Take the money. Jen, go to Europe, buy a house, start over. You can have a life, or you can have a war. You cannot have both. It's not a settlement, I said. It's a purchase order. You are buying my silence because you know the price of the truth is higher than $200,000. The truth is whatever we can prove in court, Brooks said, his voice hardening. And in court, you are a woman with a history of psychiatric episodes, and we are a beloved charity saving lives. Who do you think the jury will believe? The door opened again. It wasn't security. It was Ivy. She looked like she had walked through a hurricane. Her hair, usually lacquered into perfect waves, was loose and windblown. She was wearing her gala dress, but she had a coat thrown over it, and she was clutching the red folder I had given her in the park. Ivy, Grant said, standing up, go back to the green room, now. Ivy didn't look at him. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide, glassy with shock. Is it true? She whispered. Ivy, please, Brooks said, standing up and moving toward her. Genesis is trying to upset you. We discussed this. I read it, Ivy said. Her voice was trembling, but it was loud enough to echo in the small room. I opened the emergency folder. Grant, I read the crisis plan. She held up a piece of paper. It was the Scenario B document. It says here, Ivy read, her hands shaking so hard the paper rattled, that if I show signs of non-compliance, you are to increase my dosage. It says you are to isolate me. She looked at our father. Am I a prisoner? She asked. Is that what I am? A prisoner who pays the bills? You are sick, Grant said, his voice snapping like a whip. You are confused. This is exactly why we manage your care. Ivy, you are having an episode. I'm not having an episode, Ivy screamed. It was a raw, guttural sound that made Brooks flinch. I'm waking up. I went to a real doctor. Dad, I went to a clinic in Boston yesterday. I paid cash. The room went dead silent. I don't have a systemic autoimmune disorder, Ivy said, tears streaming down her face. I have malnutrition, and I have high levels of sedatives in my blood. The doctor said I'm being poisoned. That is absurd, Brooks said quickly. Doctor, Thorne will explain. Doctor, Thorne is on your payroll, Ivy shouted. The door to the conference room was still open. I saw a few heads turn in the hallway. A board member, a woman with silver hair and a diamond brooch, paused outside, looking in. Close the door, Grant hissed at Brooks. Leave it open, I said. I stood up. I opened my black folder. I have the pharmacy logs, I said, my voice clear and steady. I have the logs showing Marla picking up lorazepam on the dates of my alleged episodes. I have the emails from Brooks drafting the narrative of the good twin and the bad twin 3 months before the charity was even registered. I pulled out the memo, the twin variable memo, and I have this, I said. Dated 3 days ago. Risk, unmanaged twin variable. Immediate neutralization of credibility. Fabricate police report. I slid the memo toward the woman standing in the doorway. She was a major donor. I recognized her from the website. They aren't saving families, I said to her. They are running a reality show, and they are drugging the cast. The woman picked up the memo. She read it. Her face went pale. Grant, she said, stepping into the room. What is this? What is a twin variable? It's an internal strategy document, Brooks said, sweating now. It's taken out of context. Genesis is a disgruntled family member who... I have a preservation notice filed with the Superior Court, a voice said from my phone. Elena Price. I had dialed her in before I entered the room. Her voice was tinny but authoritative over the speaker. My name is Elena Price, attorney for Genesis Reed. You are currently in possession of evidence detailing medical fraud, conspiracy, and unlawful imprisonment. Any attempt to destroy, alter, or conceal these documents will be met with immediate criminal referral. The Attorney General has already been copied on the draft complaint. Grant looked at the phone. He looked at the donor reading the memo. He looked at Ivy, who was sobbing quietly against the wall. For the first time in my life, I saw my father look small. The majesty was gone. The devoted father mask had slipped, revealing the panicked manager underneath. Marla, Grant shouted. Get in here. Marla appeared from the hallway. She must have been waiting in the wings, ready for the photo op. She saw the scene, the papers, the crying donor, the recording phone, and she immediately went into performance mode. She rushed to Ivy. Oh, my baby, Marla cried, reaching for her. Come here. Come away from her. Genesis is doing it again. She's confusing you. Ivy recoiled. She pushed Marla away with a force that sent our mother stumbling back into the table. Don't touch me, Ivy whispered. Ivy, please, Marla pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. We love you. We are a family. Don't let her break us. She's just jealous. She's always been jealous of your light. Ivy looked at Marla. She looked at the woman who had signed the orders to medicate her. Did you ever love me? Ivy asked. Of course I love you, Marla sobbed. I gave my life for you. No, Ivy said. You gave your life for the story. You love the survivor. You don't love the girl. Ivy turned to me. The room was silent. The donor was watching. Brooks was texting frantically. Grant was staring at the floor. Jenna, Ivy said. Her voice was quiet, devastating. Did you ever feel loved by them? I looked at my parents. I looked at the people who had erased my birthday, my records, my sanity. Sometimes, I said honestly, when I was very small, before the narrative started, I remember moments. I took a breath. And I spent 20 years pretending that was enough. I spent 20 years thinking that if I just stayed quiet, if I just played the villain, you would eventually love me for the sacrifice. But you don't love the sacrifice. You just spend the money. Security! Grant roared. Get them out of here. 2 uniformed guards rushed in. They grabbed my arms. They didn't grab Ivy. But she stepped next to me. If you take her, Ivy said, you take me. Ivy, no, Grant warned. Stay here. We can fix this. It's already broken, Ivy said. The guards hesitated, looking at Grant. Remove Genesis, Brooks ordered. Leave Ivy. They pulled me back. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I let them drag me toward the door. As we moved into the hallway, the doors to the main auditorium opened. The presentation was delayed. Donors were milling about. They saw 2 security guards hauling the founder's daughter out of the conference room. They saw the weeping donor holding a memo about neutralization. They saw Grant read, Red-faced and screaming, the whisper started. It began as a low murmur and spread like a brush fire. What is happening? Is that the other twin? Why are they hurting her? I caught the eye of a reporter from the local paper who was standing near the buffet. I nodded to him. He raised his camera. Click. The image of my expulsion. The image of the unstable daughter being removed while looking perfectly calm. It was the photo that would end them. They pushed me out the side door and into the night. Nina followed, breathless. The door slammed shut behind us. I stood on the sidewalk. The air was cold, biting. I expected to feel humiliated. I expected to feel the old shame, the feeling of being the unwanted refuse of the Reed family. But I didn't feel shame. I felt light. I took a deep breath. It tasted like oxygen. Not secrets. You did it, Nina whispered. You actually did it. I didn't win, I said, looking at the closed doors of the town hall. They still have the money. They still have the lawyers. But they don't have the story, Nina said. You took the pen back. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Elena. Subject: New development. I opened it. Ironclad Storage just called. Apparently, the preservation notice spooked someone in management. They found an additional box of records that had been misfiled under a shell company name. I'm looking at the scan now. Genesis. There is a birth log. It's signed by a doctor, Eris Thorne. It lists 2 live births, but there is a note in the margins. I scrolled down. Note: Twin A, Ivy, shows signs of significant hypoxia, prognosis poor. Twin B, Genesis, healthy, and then a second note, dated 2 days later. Transfer of identity suggested. Parents favor the survivor narrative. Switched bracelets at 0900 hours. I stared at the phone, the world tilted on its axis. Twin A shows signs of hypoxia. Ivy was the sick one. She really was sick. She had suffered oxygen deprivation at birth, but transfer of identity suggested I wasn't Genesis. I was the healthy one. I was the one who was supposed to be the survivor, but they had switched us. They had given the name Ivy, the name they had picked for the golden child, to the sick baby, because they couldn't bear for the perfect name to be associated with a disability. And they had given me the name Genesis. And then, when the sick baby recovered better than expected but still needed a story, they realized they had a problem. They had 2 girls, one healthy, one fragile. So they flipped the script. They made the healthy girl the bad one to explain why she wasn't the center of attention. They made the fragile girl the miracle to monetize her recovery. I looked at the building. I wasn't the complication. I was the original. And Ivy. Ivy was the one who had been living in a stolen life. What is it? Nina asked. It's everything, I said. It's the whole ending. I looked at the text again. The new records could prove the fraud definitively, but they would also destroy Ivy's entire understanding of who she was. She wasn't just a prop. She was a replacement. I looked at the town hall. I could see Ivy through the glass of the lobby. She was standing alone, watching the door where I had exited. She looked lost. I typed a reply to Elena. File it. All of it. I put the phone in my pocket. I walked toward my car. The story wasn't over. The lawsuits would come. The press conferences. The ruin. But for the first time in 32 years, I knew exactly who I was. And nobody was ever going to tell me to stay home again. Thank you for listening to Stay Home. Nobody Wants You There. This story explored the dark side of family dynamics, identity, and the lengths people will go to protect a carefully curated image. Genesis's journey from a gaslit daughter to a woman who reclaimed her reality is a testament to the power of truth, even when it hurts. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending. Do you think Genesis made the right choice to expose the family publicly? And what do you think will happen to Ivy now that the truth about the identity switch is out? Please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of justice, secrets, and retribution coming your way. Don't forget to like and share your thoughts in English in the comments below.